Now, amidst all the technical difficulties Google Hangouts has given us, we are here. We are live. It is I, Nick Baldwin of BladeElbow.com. I'm joined for the very first time by a writer and editor of MMAsucker.com. Michael DeSantis is joining me for our UFC 222 post-fight wrap-up show. It's going to be pretty brief. It's 1 a.m. where I am. It's 2 a.m. over there in New York, where you live, Michael. So it's getting late. The card ended an hour and a half ago. Not an ideal time to start this, but you've been battling technical difficulties, and I don't know how exactly we got them figured out, but we did. And I keep on telling Twitter that we're not doing the show, but here we are. We got it working. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
It's a miracle. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks again for coming on. It's for anybody not or anybody listening, we've known each other for quite a while, and this is the first time talking voice to voice and not just over message on Facebook. And so that's good. It's good to talk to you. Really appreciate you stepping up on short notice for Jed Meshew, who I think might be sleeping right now. I can't blame him. I probably should be too. And I wouldn't mind to be sleeping right now, but let's have some fun on this post-fight wrap-up show. I think it'll be a decent time. We won't go for that long, considering A, it's getting late, B, the card ended already a little while ago, and I have some other stuff to do before going to bed anyway. So let us dive right in. We had UFC 222 go down from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas this very Saturday night. We had the UFC Women's Featherweight Championship on the line. Cris Cyborg taking on Yana Kunitskaya. And unsurprisingly, we had Cris Cyborg come out the victor here, and she knocked out Yana Kunitskaya via, TKO'd her, I guess you could say, in the very first round. As expected, biggest favorite on the card. One of the biggest favorite. I'm not quite in UFC history, but I think Cyborg was the biggest favorite she's been in the UFC. I know some Invicta lines were a bit wider, but still just kind of incredible how big of a mismatch going in, and in hindsight, this was. For anybody tuning in, maybe to our post-fight wrap-up show for the very first time, we're not going to go through each and every fight. I have a list of subjects, topics, whatever you want to call them, planned. We're just going to go through that and that'll be the outline of the show. And if we want to go off a little bit from there, we can, but we might as well stay on track for the most part. So we'll start out with the best fight of the night. There were a few good ones here. There appeared to be a standout performance for me. I don't know about you. What was your favorite fight for 222?
I was really pulled in by the bantamweight bout, Sean O'Malley versus Andre Sukumtov. It's just a really fun back and forth fight. A lot of big moments. The one thing that really caught me off guard, though, was the Sukumtov taking O'Malley down when he had him wobbling on one leg. That really surprised me.
No, I know it really, that was surprising, but that was also my favorite fight of the night as well. That was a good fight. It was in a way one-sided. I mean, Sean O'Malley looked really good in this fight. He looked better in this one than I think his debut against Tyron Ware late last year. To me, I think it was just a bit of a more clean performance. He didn't get hit as much as he did against Ware, but most of all, he didn't gas out nearly as bad as he did versus Ware. And I know he was starting to get tired, or at least said so, on his Contender Series fight last summer as well. So he seems to get or have gotten his cardio issues a little bit out of the way for now anyways. And I suspect they'll just keep on getting better. So, I mean, and this guy just looked a little crisper on the feet. So Sean O'Malley, young, he's confident, maybe even cocky. This guy certainly looks like he could make some waves in the future. I won't be surprised if we're talking about this kid as a top contender in a year or two from now. Maybe not a year. I mean, let's be honest. We got to give fighters like Sean O'Malley time. We can't rush them in, super quickly. And I think we saw that in the feature prelim tonight when Mackenzie Dern took on Ashley Yoder in her debut. Wasn't a great performance, but nonetheless, Andre Sukumtov, Sean O'Malley was fun. It was my pick for fight of the night. I thought it'd be a little more. It was sort of a tale of two fights in a way. Sean did so well in the early two rounds, and then when he suffered that perhaps ankle injury, foot injury, whatever it was. According to Dana White, there was no broken bone. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happened, but he seemed to be in tons of pain after the fight. So you sort of give him the benefit of the doubt, even though apparently there is no broken bone in the x-ray. So considering that, I mean, the guy definitely wanted to win. He's not a quitter, as some people might call some fighters, and so I think that showed good as well. But I think, as you highlighted, Sukumtov's fight IQ, he's usually more or less a smart fighter. I haven't seen tons from him to think otherwise, but man, tonight was not his night. Going for those takedowns when his opponent was visibly hurt, injured, that was just not a smart move whatsoever. Really, really crazy. And I know his teammate at Combat Club down in Florida, Rashad Evans, was on analyst duties tonight, and he apparently was going nuts during this fight, and as he should have been. I mean, I think everybody who sort of knows the fight game or knows what they're talking about knows that this was not a good move from Andrei Sukumtov. So that was a good fight. Let's go on the complete flip side. Do you have something else to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, Sukumtov, like, he might not, be as blamed as bad if he wasn't sure of, that he hurt O'Malley that bad. But O'Malley was hobbling. He was leaping in front of him. I don't know how he didn't catch that or why he did what he did. But it wasn't like what we saw from Jessica Rose Clark and Paige Van Zandt, where Van Zandt broke her arm on Rose Clark's forehead, and Clark just masked it so well. So Van Zandt didn't notice, but this fight was not like that.
Let's go on the complete flip side and talk about the worst fight of tonight. And I think, again, we're going to be in agreement here. There seems to be an obvious choice. It might involve two heavyweights on the main card. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. It was pretty devoid of big moments.
And this is Andrei Arlovski versus Stefan Struve we're talking about. For anybody who maybe didn't watch the card, or I don't know how he wouldn't have gone in that, but just an FYI.
Arlovski still didn't look like he was able to turn back the clock. Struve still doesn't know how to pump a jab. Like, I had thought Struve actually had like some good moments when he was able to get Arlovski down to the ground, but he just didn't go for them often enough. I would have liked to see him try to shoot more takedowns, but Arlovski actually secured, I think, twice as many takedowns as he has over the rest of his UFC career, which is just a mind-boggling stat.
That's crazy. That really is crazy. So I guess, I mean, like, do we take away something from this fight as far as Arlovski? Hey, he's not completely done, maybe, but it's like if Struve had hit him, he still probably would have gone down, and we would have come to the conclusion, oh, Andrei's shot, he's done, he's washed up, all that. And just because Struve can't put his, can't fight off his jab, he can't fight behind his jab, he can't put his strikes together, he forgets he's a 7-foot tall fighter with the longest reach in the UFC, or tied for it. I always get confused between his and John Jones's, but nonetheless, I mean, not a great performance from either guy. Pretty poor performance from both guys, to be quite frank about it. Did we expect a ton from this fight? Certainly not, but it is mind-boggling in hindsight, even more so. I mean, even going in, it would have been a little crazy, but this was initially perhaps slated as the co-main event when it was exactly when it was Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar. I know according to the poster anyways, which would have given us a pretty good indication of things, that this was supposed to be the second last fight on the card, and that would not have been a good way to go into the quite highly anticipated Holloway Edgar fight that appears to maybe never will happen. But so that's a shame. Just a side note. But
what this teaches us about Arlovski is that he's not completely shot, but it also shows us that I don't think he'll be a UFC champion once again.
No, far from it. And Stefan Struve, I mean, the guy's 30 years old, but he doesn't really, I mean, fight years wise, he's a lot older than that. He's taken enough damage. He didn't really take damage here. No one did. So I guess that's the big positive here. No one got badly hurt, because I didn't want to see Andrei Arlovski flat on the canvas yet again. I don't need to see that from Struve either. So that was the positive here, but as far as a fan perspective, definitely not a great showing from either man. Let's go to yes.
Who do you think Arlovski fights next? I think Timothy Johnson would be a good opponent for him.
Wouldn't be a terrible fight. I don't have the rankings up in front of me. There's heavyweight so bad. Is there a good option? Probably not.
Probably not.
I mean, I think there's a few guys that okay, I'll watch it, but I don't know. At this point, retirement maybe, like that might be his best option, honestly. Unless he needs
Wouldn't be a bad option.
yeah. Finish of the night. We had some good finishes. Of course, Cris Cyborg getting the job done early in the main event, and one fight we didn't mention yet, but I'm sure we'll talk about later, maybe even right now. Brian Ortega's TKO win over Frankie Edgar. How incredible was that? KO win, TKO. Yeah, I mean, strikes, stoppage to the strikes. Let's go with that. Man, that was incredible. Was this your finish of the night? I know we had some other finishes, and they were good ones. We also had Alex Hernandez upset Beneil Dariush. That has to be right up there. Finish of the night. What was it?
It was definitely Ortega over Edgar. Not just because of like how he did it, but who he did it against. Edgar had never been finished in his MMA career before tonight, and Ortega just emphatically knocked out Frankie Edgar. You know, I was stunned, as was everyone else in our MMA Sucka chat. Just couldn't believe what we saw. Like when we saw that image of Edgar like pop up online, just on the ground, out of it, it was like, who photoshopped that?
No, I know. It really was incredible because this was the first time Frankie Edgar had ever been stopped. This guy is a fighter or has been a fighter for almost 13 years. He made his debut, I believe it was in July of 2005. I was 5 years old. I mean, it's really difficult to comprehend how far Frankie Edgar has come over this long amount of time. I mean, he hasn't declined. Maybe that does start now. I won't be surprised, but it really is incredible how competitive he's been in two-weight classes, lightweight and featherweight. He hasn't been stopped. I mean, his whole career is really just amazing. He's obviously a future Hall of Famer, but man, getting knocked out by Brian Ortega isn't the best stoppage loss you can have on your record. I mean, if he had gotten choked out by Brian Ortega, that's fine. Everyone does. But I mean, one thing I do find odd is that the two guys Brian Ortega has knocked out pretty badly in his last few fights, Clay Guida and Frankie Edgar, two guys that aren't known for getting knocked out. Yet Brian Ortega is not really a knockout artist. He's not known for his punching power, for his technical striking. He's known for his amazing jiu-jitsu. So that's one thing that I find incredible. Was it the best finish we've ever seen? No. I mean, Alex Hernandez's knockout is just demolishing of Beneil Dariush. Was probably the cleaner knockout, maybe even more impressive. But the fact that Edgar had never been stopped, he was the favorite. Brian Ortega did what no one thought he could do. Some people picked him to win, but it certainly was not by knockout. I saw nobody pick Ortega by knockout. And for that reason alone, and I think this is sort of where you were getting at as well, that has to be the finish of UFC 222 in the co-main event of the evening.
And not only that, but that fight also sets up a date with Max Holloway. So that finish basically earned Ortega a title shot.
It certainly does, and I feel like we might be talking about the same fight. Maybe we'll go to a different one. Surprise of UFC 222. What was it?
You start.
Well, for me, it has to be Alex Hernandez's knockout of Beneil Dariush. I know Ortega knocking out Edgar was so impressive, but I didn't see Beneil Dariush losing. I simply did not. I mean, I thought he was going to have his way with Alex Hernandez. I heard good things about Hernandez, but at 8-1, still young, still growing. Beneil Dariush is a veteran. He's going in with 14-3-1. He's ranked 12 in the lightweight division, the best division in the UFC. The guy's a good fighter. He's very talented in all areas. I thought he was more well-rounded than Hernandez. I thought he was just a better fighter. I thought he would do very well against Alex Hernandez, to put it lightly, but he did not. I mean, Alex Hernandez, I don't know whether to call him cocky, but he, of course, did sort of the jerk move at the beginning, went for the glove top, I think it was, and then kicked him. So, take that for what it's worth. But, man, I mean, you cannot deny the fact that this guy has A, knockout power, B, doesn't give his opponents respect, which in most cases is a decent thing or a good thing as a guy making your debut. and he has KO power, and this really was incredible. It really, I mean, I did not see this coming. One of the bigger upsets of 2018, I think, already. I know we're so early. Will this go down as the biggest one of 2018? Highly doubt it. The stakes weren't high enough, but nonetheless, Beneil Dariush was a 4-1 favorite. Everyone thought he was going to win. I saw no one pick Alex Hernandez. Was there maybe one or two? Maybe, but I did not see this coming.
I agree 100% with you. Beneil Dariush is a legit top 10 lightweight. He has wins over guys like Rashid Magomedov, finishes over James Vick, Darren Cruikshank, wins over Jim Miller, Michael Johnson. So, yeah, I didn't think Alexander Hernandez was going to come in and do what he did to Dariush, but here we are.
Is this bigger, in your opinion, than or more surprising than Ortega knocking out Edgar?
That's a tough question.
Putting you on the spot here, Michael.
It's the bigger upset overall because I knew that there was a chance Ortega would win. But I guess the bigger surprise I would have to say was Ortega knocking out Edgar, just because no one saw that coming.
Let's move along to the moment of the night. We had quite a few moments. I mean, we had Sean O'Malley getting interviewed on the mat by Joe Rogan as he was in pain and, just hurting very badly after winning a decision, raising his arms. I mean, that was really cool to see. We had Cris Cyborg with another mauling over Yana Kunitskaya, another mismatch. Those, in some eyes, are always fun. We had Ortega, of course. His great post-fight interview, just the finish itself. There were a lot of good moments here. It was a card that, I can't say it didn't get the respect it deserved because ultimately it wasn't a fantastic card, particularly the pay-per-view with Arlovsky, Struve on it. Zingano Vieira wasn't the most stacked, but we had some good fights. We had some good moments. What was the moment of the night?
Like you said, there are a lot. Just O'Malley's interview at the end, like you said, him lying on the ground, Joe Rogan coming over. I fucking love you, Joe Rogan. Oh, that was great.
No, it really was. I think I mentioned that first, just naming off the few I had sort of lead into you with. I said it first because that might just be the moment of the night. I mean, we had a lot of great finishes. Hernandez, getting the KO over Dariush, as we just talked about, was very cool. Mackenzie Dern making her debut. Let's be honest.
Yep.
That was pretty fascinating as well. I guess you could say the whole Dalloway Lombard situation was interesting, but
that was infamous. Not
yeah, that's not going to go down as the moment of the night. I'll go with his interview as well. I mean, I hate to sort of keep this repetitive and maybe a little boring because we're agreeing on most of these, if not all. But I don't know what it was, but I enjoyed O'Malley's interview. Just lying on the ground after win as if he was gassed, but we knew he was hurt. And I don't know, it was really cool. Raising his hands, flying, flat on the canvas. Then Joe Rogan kneeling down, talking to him, and it was all really cool. So I'll say, in a card where we had a lot of good moments, Sean O'Malley's interview, not even the performance, not even the win, not even toughing it out at the end. I'll say his interview was the moment of UFC 222. That takes us to the storyline. And I feel like there's a number of storylines coming out of this card or that we focused on this card. I think we could talk about our Cyborg mismatch is entertaining to us. I think B, we could talk about the judging. The judging was very interesting tonight.
Wasn't good, no.
I mean, there were some storylines here. There certainly was. Again, I think there's one that I can't remember, something to do with Ortega's win, I would assume. Just the fact that we can't keep doubting Ortega. What was the storyline of UFC 222 in your opinion?
For me, it's actually related to Cyborg, but it's actually not the storyline you mentioned. For me, the big storyline of the night is what's next for Cris Cyborg. I know in the post-fight interview, she actually said Amanda Nunes called her out, and she's interested in that fight next. So if that happens, if Nunes goes up to featherweight after, if she beats Raquel Pennington, then what happens to bantamweight? Does that division get held up? What happens if she beats Cyborg? What happens if that fight doesn't happen? There's just so many matchmaking possibilities that could come out of that situation. So it'll be really interesting to follow over the next, well, really several months. It's going to be a long storyline.
Yeah, that is interesting. It will be interesting to see where Cyborg goes from here. I mean, I think Amanda Nunes is the fight to make. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, because I like the Raquel Pennington fight, but she's booked for the May card against Raquel Pennington to defend the bantamweight title. If that goes her way, then maybe you look at Cyborg International Fight Week, although that's pretty quick turnaround for Nunes. Otherwise, I guess you could do Cyborg Megan Anderson, sort of run that one back because it had been booked before. There's just not many options. I mean, honestly, the UFC has to start actually building a featherweight division. I mean, we joke about how this is like a half division, but it is. It's the Cris Cyborg division. The women's featherweight UFC division does not exist. It's not a thing. It is Cris Cyborg and blown up bantamweights. I mean, they said it on the broadcast literally seconds after Yana Kunitskaya lost that Yana Kunitskaya was going to most likely head back down to 135 pounds. That's the story for literally every fighter Cris Cyborg has fought in the past few years, especially in the UFC. Holly Holm, most likely going back down to bantamweight because she's lost to Cris Cyborg. There's no one else for her to fight at 45. Tanya Evinger, Lena Landsberg, Leslie Smith. I mean, there is no featherweight division. I don't need to keep stressing that point. We all know it. And so I agree. It will be interesting to see where they go with Cyborg from here. If they don't build up a division and find actual featherweights, then they really are going to run out of opponents. It's kind of crazy to say because that's usually not a thing that happens, but it's actually something that could happen in this case. My storyline of the card is going to be related to all the judging. We had 5 split decisions, which I believe, according to Mike Bond of MMA Junkie, tied the record for most split decisions on a UFC card ever. And it tied it with the UFC Seoul, South Korea, Masvidal versus Benson Henderson card. That was way back in November 2015. I barely remember that just because I remember it was overnight. I watched the card, but I was half asleep, all of that. You sort of get the drill. Yeah. So I don't remember all the split decisions, but I'll take Mike's word for it. We saw a lot of bad judging tonight. The fact that one judge gave Kat Zingano the win, that's atrocious. That is a really bad scorecard. I think a 29-28 Ashley Yoder against Dern isn't the worst scorecard I've seen, but I definitely disagree with it.
It's a bad scorecard.
I think 29-28 Pedro Munoz against John Dodson isn't anything great. I can see it. Rounds 2 and 3 were pretty close, both of them, but I just can't see Munoz getting both of them. Although, yeah, I guess I could. Like, it's not the worst scorecard, but I do not agree.
I thought that one was fine.
I guess it really just comes down to round 2 and 3, right?
I didn't see the Jordan Johnson Adam Milstead fight, but the Cody Stamann Brian Caraway one, that one was a legit split decision. No qualms about that. Either man could have won. It was a great fight.
No, that was like for me, that was the one okay split decision where it's like that felt like a split win. Caraway, Stamann, that was a really close one. Really could have gone either way. I personally scored it for Stamann, but man, I was real close to just typing, 29-28 Brian Caraway for that, really big push at the very end of the third round. Jordan Johnson getting the split nod over Adam Milstead. I think one judge had it 30-27 Milstead. That again is just so horrendous. And this is what I hate about UFC cards, is because I think this is the third post-fight wrap-up show I've done since we sort of started doing this with the Machida Anders card. And I think maybe 2 of 3 of them, my storyline had to do with officiating. I think the first one was Shevchenko and the brutal stoppage of Yamasaki.
Yeah, yeah.
Now it's the judging, and it's just crazy how bad the officiating can be sometimes. And it really takes the fun out of a lot of what we like about MMA, because like during those prelim cards, I'm like, okay, someone's probably going to score the fight for Ashley Yoder. And it's like, it's worrisome, and it can ruin fighters' careers. Like, imagine had
really
Dern lost that fight. She's not going anywhere, but that's not as good as going 6-0. I mean, 5-1 doesn't look as good as 6-0. It's really crazy.
I think there's one decision that we can agree on that the judges didn't. Adelaide Bird should not be judging combat sports anymore. Pretty much all of the bad cards from tonight were hers, if I recall.
Yeah, I think surprisingly she didn't give she wasn't the one judge who gave Kat Zingano the win. So that was
Right.
surprising. That was something Morales. I don't remember. Doesn't really matter. But whoever that was should be fired. And yeah, I mean, again, some of these judges are just bad. No disrespect. I mean, maybe I mean, I don't. I mean, it's a tough job. Let's be honest. But you have to know what you're doing, and a lot of these people do not. And so I don't know how you fix it. I mean, I think you do a countrywide sanctioning body, not these ridiculous statewide bodies, and you get the rules, just one set of rules, unified rules. That's what they're supposed to be. I mean, we can go on all night about officiating. I'm not going to waste their time or our viewers' times. Let's move on to a similar point, but slightly different. Your takeaway.
My takeaway. Well, like I mentioned, the featherweight and bantamweight women's title pictures are about to get really interesting. O'Malley, depending on how severe his injury is, he's going to be out for a while, but it'll be exciting when he comes back. And I'm also just excited to see where Mackenzie Dern goes next. Honestly, I didn't think she was ready for the UFC yet, and I don't think she is still, based on the high level of competition in the promotion. I thought she would have been better suited to fight a few more bouts in Invicta, but she's here now. She won. She's not going anywhere.
I think that might be my big takeaway. The fact that Mackenzie Dern, is she UFC caliber? Maybe. I mean, she just beat Ashley Yoder, who's now 0-3 in the UFC. I don't know how much that tells me. I mean, I was not impressed with her performance, to be quite honest about it. Those first two rounds were not good rounds. I mean, even though she won one of them, they were not good at all. I mean, she struggled to get it down to the ground up until basically the last minute and a half or so of the third round of the entire fight. That's not good enough when you're fighting a fighter who has pretty good skills and who's maybe a top 15 fighter. That's not going to go well if you're fighting, a ranked fighter who, I mean, it was well rounded. And I mean, Mackenzie Dern, people always say, and I'm sort of ripping off, I think it might have been Luke Thomas who mentioned this. Mackenzie Dern, more than her striking, she needs to work on her wrestling. Striking is going to come, but that wrestling is key because she is not very good at single leg or double leg takedowns, getting it down to the ground. She needs trips, and you can't just rely on that all the time. She struggles in the takedown department, and as a world-class jiu-jitsu artist, you can't be that way. I mean, you have to be able to get these takedowns because that's key in MMA. We saw what she did when she did get a takedown, when she did get on top. Unfortunately for her, that only came in the last minute, as I mentioned, and she was able to do great work for the last minute, probably secure the win. But again, that's not going to fly when you're fighting a fighter who is really talented. And let's be honest, Ashley Yoder probably doesn't fall into that category. So this was arguably a step up in competition. She barely passed it in flying colors. And I think the big takeaway is, well, Mackenzie Dern's not ready for the best of the best, very far from it. You need to take her very slowly, or this will just be another failed, up-and-comer potential star that the UFC markets and pushes in the worst way possible. I fear they end up, rushing her into a big fight. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You need to push her very, very slowly. And so fingers are crossed that they do, but
for the record, you mentioned top 15. The 15th ranked woman in the strawweight division right now is Nina Ansaroff, who is actually a pretty legit talent.
Yeah, strawweight's actually pretty good right now. Strawweight's a good division.
Steep. And my other takeaway from that fight is Dern should probably look into training with a guy like Damian Maia, who has really adapted his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game into MMA. You see how much better he's gotten with getting guys down to the ground, his takedowns, his trips. He got guys like Jorge Masvidal down, and Masvidal has pretty good takedown defense. So if Mackenzie Dern could work on her MMA wrestling, that's what she needs to really step up to the next level. Now, I've noticed improvements in her striking each bout, but what I haven't really noticed are improvements in her wrestling. So she needs to fix that.
Now, I have worst officiating down. I think that would include the judges, and I don't think there's any debate that they go to, well, A, Adelaide Bird yet again, and I guess any of the other terrible judges tonight, right?
Right, the one who scored the fight for Katzengano, yeah.
Let's move on to bonuses, and I saw who they got or who the bonus winners are, so might be a little biased just because I know who got them and who didn't. But who are you gonna give? I don't know if you know them yet or not, but who do you give fight of the night and your two performances?
Fight of the night, I give to Sean O'Malley and Andre Sukuntoth, and performance of the night, I give to Cris Cyborg and Brian Ortega. And I did not see the bonuses, so
Okay. For me, fight of the night would have to be O'Malley, Sukuntal. Although I'm not opposed to doing 4 performance of the night bonuses, to be honest. I guess my performances would have to go to. Let's see. I guess you have to sort of go with Brian Ortega. You could go Cris Cyborg, but I'll mix it up a little bit and go with Alexander Hernandez. I believe my four are who the one or who got the bonuses. Cris Cyborg very surprisingly didn't. I mean, I thought she was a lock going in, but I'm totally fine with them giving Alex Hernandez 50K instead of Cris Cyborg. Alex
yeah.
Hernandez is making 20 grand for this fight on top, plus the bonus.
Hernandez needs it more.
Cris Cyborg's making 500 grand. She is okay right now.
Yeah.
I mean, fighter pay is still low all around, but I'd rather the 10-10 fighter get an extra 50K. Might be life changing for Cris Cyborg. That's just an extra little paycheck. So the bonuses
did go to the Cyborg did what the UFC was expecting there, whereas Hernandez shocked everyone. So,
when you have a huge upset like that in devastating fashion, it's hard not to give someone like Alex Hernandez 50K. Let's move on and talk about the fighter to watch moving forward. There's a lot of them. I think. Oh, okay. I'm going to backtrack real quick and go back to storyline. The storyline I forgot to mention, the one I mentioned that I had thought of but couldn't remember it, was the fact that we had a lot of young talent win tonight. And that's good for the UFC. It's good turnover for the UFC rankings, for the UFC promotion in general. We had some old fighters lose to, up and comers, so to speak. We had Brian Ortega, sort of a passing of the torch at featherweight, beating Frankie Edgar. We had Mackenzie Dern come out, win. Wasn't pretty, but she got the job done. She's obviously a very highly anticipated fighter. We had Caitlin Vieira beat Katzengano, sort of a passing of the torch at women's bantamweight. We had Sean O'Malley win. We had Alex Hernandez win. We had a lot of young guys win and girls tonight, and I think that was a big storyline. But just back to what we were talking about, who's your fighter to watch moving forward?
Ironically, this is one of the younger guys that won, and you didn't even mention him. Cody Stamann is my fighter to watch moving forward. He was a very, very close fight, split decision, but he did take out the number 7 bantamweight in the world in a pretty deep division. So when the rankings come out on Wednesday, I believe Stamann's definitely going to have a number next to his name. Will it be top 10? Will it be top 15? I don't know, but a number will definitely be there. And he set himself up for a big fight next. I think he should fight. What's his name? I think he should fight John Lineker next.
John Lineker, that's interesting. I don't love the fight, to be honest. I think it might be too much too soon, but hey, he beat number 7 in the world, Brian Caraway. Granted, it was coming off a long layoff for Caraway, but I don't hate it. I don't love it. But I think that would be interesting if it does get booked. I was looking at the rankings earlier, and that's when I had mentioned them do John Dodson, who we hadn't or who we haven't talked about. He got the job done against Pedro Munoz. I like Dodson versus Rob Font a lot, but I guess looking at the rankings, there's not too many great options for Cody Stamann, because below Brian Caraway you have John Dodson, who just won, who I want to see fight Rob Font. Then you have Aljamain Sterling, who's coming off a loss. Pedro Munoz coming off a loss. Thomas Almeida coming off a loss. Brett Johns is booked. Eddie Wineland. Do you do Brian Kelleher? I mean, maybe he deserves more than that. It's a tough call. So I don't hate the John Lineker fight. I guess that makes more sense than pretty much anything else, even though I still feel like that might be a little too much too soon. But hey, he might prove some people wrong yet again. My fighter to
Never know.
watch has to be Sean O'Malley here. I was really impressed with his performance. I actually picked Andre Sukumta to win, but Sean O'Malley looked a lot more impressive tonight than last time, and I still think against Darian Ware, he put on a pretty good performance, a respectable performance considering it was his debut. And I think this guy at 23 years old is just getting better. So I think Sean O'Malley, Sugar Sean, has to be my fighter to watch moving forward in the future. Let's go to fight to make. Let's go to fight to make. We have the potential of Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. I can't wait for that fight. That's going to be outstanding. And that is a very close fight for the UFC featherweight title. I can't wait for that fight. We don't know what Cris Cyborg what will happen with Cris Cyborg next. What do you want to out of any fighter on this card, winner, loser, anyone? Give me one matchup. I know we just talked about Cody Stamann, John Lineker. Do you have another one?
So you just mentioned Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega, and that's obvious. We talked about Cyborg's matchups before. I'm going to say Ketlin Vieira versus Jermaine Durandamy. Because
even though Jermaine Durandamy is nowhere to be seen,
she has to come out. She has to come out from hiding sometime.
You never know. I don't know. I was thinking about Jermaine Durandamy recently, but I was just thinking soon enough we're going to see breaking news: Jermaine Durandamy retires from MMA.
You know what? If I can be honest, I was actually thinking the winner of Zingano and Vieira was going to get the next title shot of Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington.
Okay, yeah, the winner of that I could.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually seeing that fight as a title eliminator, as were others.
But Marion Renault disagrees.
Yeah, but if Cyborg faces Nunes next, that's going to create a logjam in bantamweight. And I think Vieira is going to have to fight one more time. And you could do Vieira versus Holly Holm for a title shot, but we've seen Holly Holm get so many title shots lately. It'd be nice to see, fresh face.
A 40-year-old teacher like Marion Renault?
Oh, that'd be another option, yeah.
I thought you were going that way, but to me, I mean, I want to see Holloway Ortega more than pretty much any other fight except for Ferguson Khabib in 2018. But
I agree.
Just to mix things up a little bit more, I think the fight to make here is pretty obvious. Ketlin Vieira versus Marion Renault. I mean, Marion Renault is coming off the win over Sarah McMahon. Ketlin Vieira sort of won up on Renault because both have the win over Sarah McMahon. Now Vieira just added to her resume, getting the job done against a former title challenger in Kat Zingano. But with Nunes Pennington just booked for May, we're still like two and a half months or so from that fight. And then, as you mentioned, maybe they do Nunes Cyborg after that. So a bit of a logjam. And so depending if Pennington wins, I don't know if that happens. Assuming Nunes wins, I think the fight to make here, maybe on that Brazil card, the UFC 224 in May, you do Ketlin Vieira, a Brazilian, taking on Marion Renault in a number one contender fight. I like it a lot. I think it makes sense. Won't complain if Vieira gets the next title shot, but I don't know how that lines up too well considering we have a title fight booked for 2 months from now. So I like Vieira versus Renault as my fight to make. Last but not least, sort of, I guess the depressing part of the show, I don't know, who is on the chopping block? Fighter on the chopping block who's lost a couple in a row, just hasn't lived up to expectations, hasn't looked very good. And I mean, considering this is a pay-per-view card, usually we have some decent talent on here and not a lot of fighters sort of on the chopping block. But if you have to pick one, if you feel like no one from this card is going to get cut, which could be the case, if you're going to cut one, you have to cut one. And Mike Pyle doesn't count because he is headed off in retirement. Salute to Mike Pyle. Great career. Who is it?
Can I pick two?
Sure. Double trouble, I guess.
I mean, you never want to talk about like who should be cut, but Ashley Yoder, 3 fights in the UFC now, 0-3. It's hard to survive 3 losses in the UFC, especially when you don't have a win yet. And Yoder might be expendable. My other one, maybe Andre Sukumtov. He's now 1-3 in the UFC, I believe. He had a couple of split decision losses, but UFC brass might be seeing his fight IQ against Sean O'Malley, and that might be the thing that boots Sukumtov from the division, from the promotion, I should say.
It's tough to disagree with Sukumtov. Yoda, I mean, that makes all the sense in the world, to be honest. For some reason, I completely forgot about her. I was actually going to say Andrei Sukumtov might be number one, but Yoder above all. And I think there's a chance that Adam Milstead might be sent his walking papers as well. I hope not, just because the loss to Curtis Blades was brutal, the knee injury, all that. And I mean, losing a close fight to Jordan Johnson, not the worst thing that can happen to you. Not a great result considering it was a pretty boring fight, but I think he might be done. But gun to my head, I think Adam Milstead gets one more crack at it, considering this was his light heavyweight debut. Ashley Yoder is probably going to be sent back to Invicta. Gun to my head, Sukumtov sticks around. Hector Lombard could be done. He really could be. He could be headed off to Bellator, headed to ACB. Sometimes it seems tough, or it's tough to see UFC cutting big names like Hector Lombard, because he still seems to be like a big enough name. Like, they're never going to cut someone like Anthony Pettis, even if he goes on a 6-fight losing streak. They're just not going to do it.
Right.
I mean, and the thing with Johnny Hendricks, I mean, he is a free agent, so technically he never got cut. He just didn't get re-signed, if that ends up happening. But Hector Lombard hasn't won a fight since March 2014. It's been almost 4 years. And so, getting DQ, that's not a great look either. I guess the only argument would be, hey, maybe he shouldn't have gotten DQ'd, although I feel like he should have. Obviously, if no one saw that, or if someone didn't see the fight, of course, it was late shots after the bell. Basically knocked out CB Dalloway, and he could not continue afterwards. He could be cut. So, yeah, I'll go with Ashley Yoder if I'm picking one fighter, but there's a couple more here that, to be honest, probably could be as well.
Yep.
That does it. Unless you have anything else to add, go for it right now, but I think we're good to go.
No, mind if I just talk about my column real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that in a sec, but we'll plug away at the end. That is it for UFC 222 for our post-fight wrap-up show. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. Now, Michael, let us know where we can find you on social media, and, of course, where we can find all of your MMA coverage over at MMAsucker.com.
Right. I mean, I've watched, listened to so many of your shows. I should have known. You follow me on Twitter at MDeSantis24, MDESANTIS24. So I do a column on MMAsucker.com called Armchair Matchmaker, where after each big weekend, I take a look at big events like UFC, Bellator, and then even some smaller events, break down the card, look at what fights should be made next. So yeah, always looking for people to check that out. So I just want to say thank you for the time. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll do this again in the future. Maybe next time Jed falls asleep, which probably won't be in too much time whatsoever. Thank you guys for watching. If anybody is watching, I know it's getting late. I know the card ended like 2 hours ago. And I know you might be watching Luke Thomas's post-fight show, but it's probably better. But if you are listening, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, go give us a thumbs up down there. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Down there, if you have to be on YouTube, but I guess type in the MMA Circus if you want to find it another way, not taking the shortcut that is right down there. If you could subscribe, that would mean a lot to me, especially with the fact that YouTube has changed up their monetization policies, where I'm not making any money now because I need 1,000 subscribers. I'm still pretty far away from that, but hopefully we'll get there eventually. One subscribe definitely goes a long way, so I'd really appreciate that. And any feedback for this show, for any other show I do, any other interview I do, drop a note in the comment section down below, and I will do my best to. I'll read it for sure, and I'll do my best to respond as well. As far as my MMA coverage, you can check me out on Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find all my writing over at bloodyelbow.com. I have a bunch of interviews up at Bloody Elbow as well, but even more so on this YouTube channel. Let's see if I can pull them up. There is a lot, and I'll just list them up by name real quick. Posted today, Kevin Lee and Max Griffin posted in the past couple of days. Michael Chiesa, Jimmy Rivera, Nick Newell, Ilir Latifi, Tyson Pedro, John Calistine, Ali Quinta, Darren Caldwell, Leandro Higo, Stephen Ray, Alexander Volkanovsky, Mariusz Shanskevich, and we will stop there. Thank you all so much for watching. That is it for our UFC 222 post-fight wrap-up show. No UFC next weekend, and we won't be doing a show for UFC London. I will be on a plane during UFC London, so I guess we'll talk to you after Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. That's going to be incredible. See you then. Thanks for listening.